And so I think it's good we start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So with this session, we once again introduce a new and vibrant thread to our discussion as we begin to weave it into our ongoing study. We find ourselves guided by the echoes of our past sessions, our past reflections, and the foundational principle of our study remains entirely unchanged. Each session builds upon the one that came before and the ones that came before, weaving into a larger interconnected tapestry. Over the last two gatherings, we journeyed with the noble lady of Qom, Sayyedah Ma'soumeh, a story of unwavering loyalty to her brother Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, peace and blessings be upon them both, whose own trials we had just explored prior. That history of the brother and sister of sacrifice, loyalty, and the establishment of divine trust in distant lands is the very context in which our next reflection must be understood. For the light of Imamah, which shone so brightly in the father and was so loyally defended by the aunt, now passes on to the son. Today, we turn our hearts towards the ninth Imam, the son of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, and the nephew of Sayyedah Ma'soumeh, Imam Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad, al-Jawad, sometimes he's called. Peace and blessings be upon them all. His story is not separate from theirs. It is the next chapter in the epic of divine leadership confronting world tyranny. It is a story of youthful authority, of a wisdom that defied age, and of a clarity that unmasked the most sophisticated hypocrisy of his time. With the epic of the Imam of Khurasan and the Lady of Qom fresh in our minds, let us now turn to the story of the Imam of youthful authority, and in his most beautiful name and with full trust in his support, imploring his assistance and guidance, we proceed. If I can get a salawat, we will do a brief recap of the last couple of sessions.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل.
So over our last two sessions, we had the profound honor of journeying with the noble lady of Ahlul Bayt, Sayyedah Ma'soumeh, peace and blessings be upon her. We traced her life from a sacred history of sacrifice to the deep theology of her legacy. Our discussion began with her journey of loyalty. We established that her departure from Medina was not merely a family visit, but rather it was a sacred hijrah, a conscious political and spiritual migration towards the Imam of her time, her brother Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. This courageous act was a public sermon in motion, a powerful lesson in active loyalty and a definitive rejection of the Abbasid tyrant who sought to isolate the Imam. Her journey, which ended in sacrifice when her caravan was ambushed at Saveh, taught us the absolute prohibition of inclining towards oppressors, a principle that echoes today in the unwavering stance of the resistance. We then saw how her martyrdom was not an end, but the planting of a divine trust. Her burial in Qom fulfilled stunning prophecies from the Imams, transforming a humble village or even town into a sanctuary, a haram for the Ahlul Bayt. Her shrine became a living baqiyatullah, a living remnant of God, from which a civilization of scholarship and revolution would grow, making Qom a fortress of knowledge and a base for the awakening of the entire Muslim community. From this history, we move to the theology of her ziyarah, her visitation prayer, understanding it as a school of divine knowledge. We learned two very critical, important lessons. Firstly, the ziyarah is built upon the condition of recognition. The reward of paradise for visiting her is unlocked only by knowing her right, recognizing her as a perfect mirror of the Imamah. This recognition rather demands that we embrace the twin pillars of faith: loving loyalty to the camp of God, tawalla, and principled disassociation from the camp of falsehood, or tabarra. And the second point being the ziyarah teaches us the reality of intercession, shafa'ah. We ask her to intercede for us because she holds a lofty station before God. This concept of seeking a divinely appointed bridge of mercy teaches us our own worldly duty, to become intercessors for the oppressed, standing in solidarity with them and amplifying their voices. Ultimately, we discovered that her life and her ziyarah seal a single profound covenant of qawm, a pledge to live and die on the path of Muhammad and his family. Peace and blessings be upon them all. Her life was a test of loyalty for her companions, and her legacy continues to test ours. This very theme of loyalty being tested now leads us from the story of the aunt to the story of her nephew, the son of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. For with the martyrdom of his father, the ummah, the community, would face its most difficult examination yet, in the person of a young boy who was destined to become the next imam. If I can get allowed salawat, we can move on to the prologue of this next 6 series of sessions, and the prologue is entitled The Three Imams of Samarra.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So our journey now enters a new and decisive phase in the epic of the Imamah. We leave behind the era of overt public debate in the courts of the caliphs and enter the suffocating confines of military garrisons. The story of our next 3 imams, Imam Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad, Imam Ali al-Hadi, and Imam Hassan al-Askari, peace and blessings be upon them all, is a story of resistance from within the heart of a fortress, a testament to the truth that a divine light cannot be contained by mortal walls. The Abbasid Caliphate, having failed to co-opt the Imamate through the sophisticated hypocrisy of Ma'mun, as we discussed, now resorted to cruder, more direct strategy, and that of imprisonment. They constructed a new capital in Samarra, a city whose name, Surra man ra'a, which means he who sees it is pleased, was a bitter irony. For the Imams and their followers, it was not a city of pleasure, but a prison city, a tightly controlled military camp designed for one purpose: to isolate the Imam from the Ummah and to sever the sacred bond of Wilayah. It is here, under the constant surveillance of the state, that these 3 Imams accomplished one of the most critical missions in the history of Islam. Forced to operate from a position of physical confinement, they perfected the art of spiritual outreach. They expanded and solidified the underground network of deputies, or wikala, a resilient, clandestine system of communication and guidance that connected them to their followers across the vast Islamic world. This network was not merely an administrative tool. It was the essential spiritual and social infrastructure that would prepare the Shia community for the most challenging trial it would ever face: the impending dawn of the major occultation of Imam al-Mahdi. May our souls be his ransom, and may God hasten his return. The lives of these 3 Imams are therefore a masterclass in how to lead a global movement from a prison, how to nurture a community in the face of relentless persecution, and how to prepare the faithful for an era when the Imam would be physically veiled from their sight. Their story is the story of a light that shone ever brighter as the darkness closed in. In a final, brilliant explosion before the dawn of a new reality. Let us now begin our journey with the first of these 3 noble souls, the Imam of Youthful Authority, who was the first to be summoned from the city of the prophets to the fortress of the illegitimate caliphs. Please give me a salawat, and we begin with Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, Youthful Authority and Eternal Clarity.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So first we start off with a Qur'anic phrase. To understand the profound life of Imam al-Jawad, we must first anchor our reflections in the eternal wisdom of the Qur'an. It is God himself who sets the stage for the Imam's divine mission, preparing us to recognize the signs of his authority and to distinguish truth from falsehood. Through his words, he provides the sacred lens through which we can perceive the three central themes of the Imam's story. So let's firstly look at the idea of divinely appointed leadership. On the nature of divinely appointed leadership and its independence from worldly standards like age, God gives us a stunning precedent of John the Baptist, Prophet Yahya, peace and blessings be upon him, stating, and this is from Quran, Surah Maryam, the chapter of Saint Mary, 19th chapter of the Quran, verse number 12. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, and we gave him judgment or authority while still a child. Now, the key to this verse is the word hukm, or judgment or authority, wisdom. It does not simply mean prophethood, rather, but it means a profound God-given wisdom. Allama Tabatabai, may God rest his pure soul, in his monumental exegesis, Tafsir al-Mizan, clarifies that this is an innate divine gift, not a product of age or experience. He says, the meaning of this word, al-hukm, is sound understanding and discerning intellect by which one distinguishes truth from falsehood. Therefore, God bestowed this intellectual power upon him while he was still a child, so that this might be an extraordinary sign and a proof that these are divine gifts in which age and experience play no part. And this is from Al-Mizan, and like with all of these sessions, the references are in the write-up. I strongly encourage everyone to review them. Building on what we learned from Allama, we can see that the great philosopher mystic, Mullah Sadra, again, may God rest his pure soul, explains that this is possible because the souls of such beings are created with a unique purity and receptivity to the divine realm, allowing them to receive wisdom that is inaccessible through ordinary means. So Mullah Sadra in his tafsir says, and again the reference is in the write-up, he says, indeed, the sacred souls, due to the intensity of their purity and their connection to the world of command, alim al-amr, may have divine knowledge effused upon them all at once, without any human teaching or temporal experience. And this is the secret of wisdom in childhood. This divine precedent is the foundation upon which the Imamah of the young Imam al-Jawad rests. So now look at the second point, which is unmasking hypocrisy. On unmasking hypocrisy, which was the defining challenge of the Imam's era, God reveals the self-defeating nature of the hypocrite's plot. In the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, the chapter of the cow, second chapter of the Quran, verse number 9, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they seek to deceive God and those who believe, but they deceive none except themselves, though they do not see it or they do not perceive. Now, this act of deception described here is a profound psychological state. Again, Allama Tabatabai, may God rest his pure soul, explains that the hypocrites are trapped in a tragic illusion. They believe they are masterfully manipulating the believers and the divine system, but in reality, their deception only deepens their own misguidance. Their hypocrisy acts as a veil over their own hearts. Allama says, deception is to show one thing while concealing its opposite to achieve a goal. Their deception only relates to the outward actions of the Prophet and the believers. As for the inner reality of the affair, which is with God the glorified, they can never reach it. Therefore, their deception in reality returns upon themselves, as they harm themselves with perpetual punishment from where they do not perceive. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, and again, all the references are in the write-up. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, in his Tafsir Tasneem, expands this to the socio-political realm. He explains that such hypocrites fail to understand that the system of truth, led by a divine guide, has its own God-given awareness that exposes internal corruption. Ayatollah Jawadi says, the hypocrites do not know that the Islamic system possesses a discerning eye and a hearing ear that is aware of their inner states. With their hypocrisy, before they can harm the believers, they destroy the root of their own humanity and their divine nature, or fitrah. And again, the reference is in the write-up, but we can see this being exemplified in what the Zionists and the Takfiris do. This literally is like describing that. The life of Imam Jawad then becomes a living commentary on these verses, as he acted as that discerning eye, which exposed the self-deceiving plots of the Khalif Ma'mun and the remainder of the Abbasid Khalifs. And the third point is intellectual debate. On the Imam's primary method of jihad, the weapon of intellectual debate, God gives glad tidings to those who seek truth with an open heart and a discerning mind. In Quran, in Surah Al-Zumar, a chapter of the troops, 39th chapter of the Quran, verses 17 to 18, God says, so give glad tidings to my servants who listen to what is said and follow the best of it. This verse is not a praise of passive listening, but rather of active, critical discernment. Allama Tabatabai clarifies that the verse describes a process of intellectual struggle, hearing multiple viewpoints, and then, with divine guidance, choosing the one that is most true and perfect. Allama says, the verse praises those who are not content with blind imitation, but listen to different sayings, distinguish between truth and falsehood, and then follow the best saying, which is the most truthful and the one that best guides to righteousness. This is the spirit of scholarly research and religious inquiry. And again, the references are in the write-up. This is precisely the spirit that Imam Jawad embodied. He did not fear the arena of debate. He entered it with the divine confidence that his words, being the embodiment of pure truth, would naturally be recognized as the best of what is said by any heart with a sound intellect. Please give me a salawat and we move to the first of the three main points, which is wisdom beyond years, the divine proof in childhood.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجه.
When the eighth Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, was martyred by poison in the far-off land of Khurasan in the year 203 after Hijrah, a profound test of faith descended upon the Shia community. The sun of the Imamah had been tragically eclipsed, and as the believers looked towards Medina for the dawn of a new light, they were met with a reality that shook the very foundations of their understanding. The designated successor, Imam Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad, was a child of only 8 years. This was not a minor issue. It was a crisis of certainty, a fitna, a test that caused great confusion and doubt. The community was accustomed to seeing the Imamah embodied in men of a mature age, of venerable experience, and a commanding physical presence. Therefore, how could a boy, not yet a man in the eyes of the world, possibly shoulder the immense spiritual and intellectual burden of guiding the entire ummah? Some wavered, their loyalty tested by a worldly standard of age and appearance. They had forgotten the standards of God are not the standards of men. The Ahlul Bayt, however, had long prepared their followers for such a test, reminding them that the Imamah is a matter of divine selection, or nas, as we had explained previously, not of human qualification. Imam Ridha made this explicitly clear during his lifetime, leaving no room for ambiguity. In a foundational hadith, he pointed to his young son, Imam Jawad, and declared the unshakable truth of his station. He said, Imam al-Ridha said to his companions, pointing to his son Abu Ja'far, meaning Imam Jawad, who was standing before him. Imam al-Ridha said, indeed, this son of mine is the one who will uphold the command of God after me, and he is the one who will be the proof of God over his creation after me. And the reference is in the write-up. The Imam's youth, therefore, was not a deficiency to be overcome, but a miracle in and of itself, a divine sign designed to purify the believer's understanding of leadership. It forced them to sever their attachment to superficial, worldly criteria and to anchor their faith in the pure, unadulterated will of God. This was not a new pattern in divine history. In the Quran, God himself establishes the precedent that his chosen guides operate on a timeline of his making, not ours. In the life of Prophet John the Baptist, Yahya ibn Zakaria, we are given the ultimate proof that divine wisdom is a gift, not an acquisition of age. In his great exegesis, Tafsir al-Mizan, Allama Tabatabai explains that the word hukm in the verse, and we mentioned this earlier, refers not to prophethood alone, but to a profound wisdom and intellectual maturity that allows one to perfectly discern truth from falsehood. Allama writes, the meaning of al-hukm is sound understanding and discerning intellect, by which one distinguishes truth from falsehood. Therefore, God bestowed this intellectual power upon him while he was still a child, so that this might be an extraordinary sign and a proof that these are divine gifts in which age and experience play no part. And the references, of course, are in the write-up. The Imamate of Imam al-Jawad was precisely such an extraordinary sign. It was a living testament that true leadership flows from a divine source, not from the passage of time. His knowledge was not learnt, but inspired. His authority was not inherited through custom, but it was bestowed by command. This is the reality that our contemporary guides have constantly emphasized as timeless lessons for every generation. For example, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, may God rest his pure soul, reflected on this very point, drawing a direct line from the doubts of that era to the clarity required in our own. And of course, the references are in the write-up. Sayyid Hassan said, when the people doubted because of his age, meaning Imam Jawad's age, the knowledge of the Imam came to silence everyone. This is a reminder for us that truth is not measured by worldly standards, but by divine appointment. In every era, the enemy may try to make us doubt our leadership with false criteria, age, wealth, social status, etc. Imam Jawad teaches us that the divine proof is above all of these measures. Therefore, the first great lesson from the Imam's life is this: to be a follower of the Ahlul Bayt is to train our eyes to recognize the light of God wherever he chooses to place it, even if it shines from the heart of a child. It is to build a faith so robust that it's anchored not in what the world deems credible, but in what God declares to be true. Let's now look at the unmasking the pious tyrant, the Imam and the gilded cage. But before that, if I can get a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So the primary antagonist in the life of Imam Jawad was not a crude, openly barbaric tyrant, but a far more dangerous adversary, the Abbas al-Khalif Ma'mun Abbasi, Ma'mun al-Rashid. Having failed in his sophisticated plot to co-opt and contain the Imam's father, Imam al-Ridha, Ma'mun now turned the same strategy upon the son. This was not a battle of swords and armies, but a war of perception, legitimacy, and intellectual integrity, a battle against a pious tyrant. Ma'mun's strategy was to construct a gilded cage. By summoning the young Imam to Baghdad and insisting on marrying him to his own daughter, al-Fadl, Ma'mun had two clear objectives. Firstly, he sought to neutralize the Imam by bringing him into the royal household. He hoped that by immersing the Imam in the luxuries of the palace, he could dilute his spiritual authority and sever him from his followers. Secondly, he aimed to legitimize his own corrupt rule. By presenting himself as the patron and father-in-law of the Prophet's descendant, he hoped to buy the religious allegiance of the Shia and cloak his oppressive regime in a veneer of religious sanctity. This move was met with immediate resistance from the Abbasid courtiers, who were outraged that the Caliph would marry his daughter to a child they deemed unfit. Even the Abbasids were against him. This opposition gave Ma'mun the perfect pretext to stage the public debate with Yahya ibn Akhtam, which we will come to shortly. When the Imam emerged victorious, Ma'mun proceeded with the marriage. However, historical narrations made it clear that the Imam saw this union not as an honor, but as a political imposition he was forced to endure. It is narrated that the Imam's own words reflected a deep awareness of the situation, showing that he was never deceived. A companion recounted the Imam's perspective on his life in Baghdad, and again, this is all referenced in the write-up. It is narrated that Ismail ibn Mihran, when Abu Ja'far, Imam al-Jawad, peace and blessings be upon him, was taken from Medina to Baghdad on the first occasion, I said to him, meaning this Ismail is saying, he said to the Imam, "May I be your ransom? I fear for you in this journey. To whom will authority pass after you?" He wept until his beard was soaked with tears. Then he turned to me and said, "The authority after me belongs to my son, Ali al-Hadi. The situation is not as you imagine. Rather, this journey is part of the trial." This narration reveals the Imam's clear-sightedness. He understood the danger and the coercive nature of the summons, yet he faced it with the certainty of divine providence. Contemporary scholars have analyzed this event with great insight, explaining that Ma'mun's political marriage was a strategic failure from its inception because it could never contain a divine reality. al-Jawad Amali explains this dynamic with profound clarity, and again, the references are all in the write-up. al-Jawadi says, "The marriage of Imam Jawad to the daughter of Ma'mun was not an ordinary marriage. Rather, it was a field of political confrontation. Ma'mun wanted to contaminate the Imam with worldliness and say to the people, 'This is your Imam, my son-in-law, and a part of my authority.' But the Imam transformed this constraint into a proof against them. With his infallibility and asceticism, he proved that the purity of the Imamah cannot be stained by the filth of power, and that the divine light does not mix with the darkness of palaces. Therefore, the gilded cage remained just that, a cage. Its golden bars could never imprison the free soul of the Imam. He lived within the palace walls, but was never of the palace. His very presence, marked by piety and a complete disinterest in worldly power, served as an unflattering mirror reflecting the deep corruption of the state. This is the timeless struggle against the Ma'mun archetype. As Imam Khamenei, may God protect him, explains, the Imam's life teaches us that true resistance is not limited to armed struggle, but includes the potent weapon of exposure. Imam Khamenei said this in a speech, and the reference for when and the details are in the write-up. Imam Khamenei said, "Imam Jawad, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us that in the face of hypocritical and duplicitous powers, one must strive with all of their being to awaken the consciousness of the people to confront these powers. Confrontation is not always with the sword. Sometimes it is with the word, with awareness, and with exposure." The second great lesson from the Imam's life is therefore a timeless warning. We must learn to look beyond the superficial performance of piety and judge leaders by the substance of their justice. The Ma'mun archetype is a recurring danger in every age. The leader who builds opulent mosques while starving the poor, who quotes the Qur'an while collaborating with oppressors, who praises the Ahlul Bayt while mimicking the actions of their enemies. And we see these type of people around us all the time. Imam Jawad teaches us that the first duty of a believer in the face of such hypocrisy is to relentlessly and courageously unmask it. And the greatest tool he wielded in this sacred act of exposure was his irrefutable, God-given knowledge, which he would demonstrate in the arena of public debate. Please give me a salawat, and we move to the next point, the final point, which is the jihad of the word, victory through irrefutable proof.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
So having witnessed the young Imam's steadfastness in the face of Ma'mun's political games, we now arrive at the primary battlefield where his divine authority was made manifest to the world, the arena of public debate. The tyrant, having failed to contain the Imam within the gilded cage of the palace, sought to discredit him intellectually. Ma'mun arranged a grand assembly in his court, a public spectacle, designed to humiliate the 9-year-old Imam by pitting him against the most learned man in the empire, the chief judge, Yahya ibn Aktham. It was a scene set for a political assassination, where the weapon of choice was a deceptively complex question of Islamic law. The court was filled with Abbasid nobles and military commanders, all waiting to see the child of the Ahlul Bayt falter. Yahya, with the arrogance of his station, turned to the Imam and posed his challenge. The historical accounts of this stunning confrontation, preserved by great scholars like Sheikh Mufid, capture the tension and the miraculous outcome of this intellectual duel. And the reference for this, of course, is in the write-up. The narration reads, Yahya ibn Aktham said, "O Abu Ja'far," meaning Imam Jawad, "do you permit me to ask you a question?" Abu Ja'far, peace and blessings be upon him, replied, "Ask if you wish." Yahya then asked, "What do you say about a person in the state of ritual consecration, muhrim, yani ihram, this is the state where when someone is going to Hajj, there is a certain level of purity and clothing and certain series of conditions." So Yahya asks, what do you say about a person in the state of ritual consecration, or muhrim, or in the state of ihram, who kills a game animal? And who kills an animal? So Abu Ja'far ibn Jawad, peace be upon him, replied, did he kill it within the sacred sanctuary, which is Mecca, or outside of it? Was the muhrim knowledgeable of the ruling or ignorant? Did he kill it intentionally or by mistake? Was the muhrim a free man or a slave? Was he a minor or an adult? Was it his first time killing, or was he a repeat offender? Was the prey a bird or something else? Was it from the small game or the large game? Was he insistent on what he did, or was he repentant? Was the killing of the prey at night or in the daytime? Was he in a state of ihram for the Hajj pilgrimage or for the Umrah? Yahya ibn Aktham was left utterly bewildered, and the signs of his incapacity and defeat were manifest upon his face. This was not merely an answer. It was a complete deconstruction of the question in and of itself. The young Imam did not just provide a ruling. He revealed the vast and intricate science of jurisprudence, or fiqh, demonstrating that a single question fragments into more than a dozen distinct scenarios, each with its own unique ruling. He wasn't just reciting knowledge he had learned. He was manifesting a divine wellspring of wisdom that was comprehensive, immediate, and utterly beyond the capacity of any human, child or adult. The victory was not in the answer. Rather, it was in the methodology. He exposed the superficiality of Yahya's knowledge by revealing the true depth of God's law. This event established the Imam's primary mode of resistance, the jihad of the word. He proved that the authority of Ahlul Bayt was not based on claims, but on irrefutable proof. In an area of sophisticated political maneuvering, the Imam wielded knowledge as a sword and clarity as a shield. As the late scholar Ayatollah Sayyedah Ma'soumeh Fadlullah, may God rest his pure soul, insightfully commented on this method, he said, and the references are all in the write-up. So Fadlullah said, the debates of Imam Jawad, peace and blessings be upon him, were not a flexing of intellectual muscles, but the establishment of a methodology that proves that true authority is the authority of knowledge and proof, al-ilm wal-burhan, not the authority of the sword and of wealth. He taught us that every era needs those who can fight falsehood with the logic of truth, which can never be defeated. The third and final lesson from the Imam's life for this session is this. The greatest jihad in an age of confusion and propaganda is the jihad of tabyin, or clarification. Imam Jawad teaches us that when faced with falsehood, cloaked in authority and righteousness, the most powerful response is not always force, but the overwhelming power of irrefutable truth. He demonstrated that one person, armed with divine knowledge and unwavering clarity, can dismantle an entire empire's intellectual pretensions without raising a sword. His victory in the court of Ma'mun is a timeless inspiration for every believer. For every believer to arm themselves with knowledge, to speak with precision, and to confront the depths of our own age with the luminous and undefeated power of proof. Please give me a salawat and we move to the conclusion, which is the Imam of clarity and the promise of a shield.
اللهم صل على محمد آل محمد.
So we have walked in this session through 3 luminous corridors in the short but brilliant life of the 9th Imam. Across these 3 lessons, a single unifying reality emerges. Imam Muhammad al-Jawad was the Imam of clarity. His entire being was an act of divine clarification, or tabyin, in an age of deliberate confusion. First, in a wisdom that defied years, his youthful authority clarified the very nature of Imamah. His presence was a divine sign, forcing the community to purify its faith, to look beyond the worldly veils of age and experience, and to recognize that true leadership is a light that God bestows by command, not a status that man acquires by custom. Secondly, in unmasking the pious tyrant, he clarified the true face of hypocrisy. Confronted with the gilded cage of Ma'mun Abbasi, he refused to be an ornament of the state. Instead, he transformed that prison of gold into a pulpit of truth, teaching every generation to beware the Ma'mun archetype, the ruler who cloaks injustice in the robes of faith. And finally, in the Jihad of the Word, he clarified the ultimate power of proof. In the court of the Khalif, surrounded by enemies, he wielded an intellect sharper than any sword, dismantling falsehood not with force, but with the overwhelming light of irrefutable logic. He taught us that the most potent resistance in an era of sophistry is unwavering, principled clarity. Yet the Imam's mission was not only to clarify the truth for the public, but also to protect his followers in private. His generosity, the very quality that earned him the title al-Jawad, which means the generous one, was not limited to the intellectual treasures he distributed in his debates. In a time of intense persecution, when his followers felt vulnerable and exposed, his generosity took the form of profound spiritual care and divine protection. He gifted his embattled community not just with knowledge, but with a fortress. And this brings us to the threshold of our next discussion. For the most famous and enduring gift of Imam al-Jawad is a legacy of spiritual protection, embodied in the powerful supplication known as the Hirs of Imam Jawad. In our next session, God willing, we will explore this sacred shield, And we will ask, why among all the supplications of all of the Imams did this hirs become the most famous and beloved? Secondly, we will ask, what is the deep and theological meaning of a hirs, a fortress of faith and reliance on God, not as a superstitious talisman? And thirdly, how does this gift of a spiritual shield perfectly manifest the Imam's title, al-Jawad, revealing him as a generous guardian who provides not only for the mind, but also for the soul? So join us, inshallah, next time as we seek refuge in the fortress of the Imam's words and uncover the meaning of faith as the ultimate shield. Please give me a salawat, and we end with a supplication eulogy for Imam Jawad, whispers of a young wali, a covenant of clarity.
اللهم صل على
اللهم صل
محمد
على محمد وآل
وآل
محمد
محمد
وعجل.
وعجل.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. O God, send your blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Send peace and blessings upon the Imam of youthful authority, the ninth lamp of your guidance, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad, the one in whom you placed your wisdom while he was still a child, making his miraculous knowledge a sign for all who seek proof. The one whose clarity unmasked the pious tyrant, and whose tongue, armed with your truth, became a sword in the Jihad of the word. O Lord, as we stand as visitors before his legacy, seeking the generosity of the generous one, al-Jawad, which is also a name of God, just as you taught the Ummah through him to look beyond the veil of age, grant us the faith that is not deceived by worldly measures. Grant us the certainty to trust in your divine appointment, whether it manifests in a child in Baghdad or a hidden Imam of our own time. Just as he turned the gilded cage of the Caliph's palace into a pulpit for truth, grant us the courage to speak against the sophisticated hypocrisies of our age. Grant us the insight to recognize the Ma'mun archetype, the tyrant who cloaks oppression in the language of faith, and grant us the fortitude to never be silenced by their power, nor seduced by their praise. O God, we are inspired by the great Ziyarah Jami' al-Kabira, which teaches us that these Imams are the treasurers of your knowledge and the lamps in the darkness. We witness this in the life of Imam Jawad. So we ask you to fill our hearts with a ray of that sacred knowledge and to make us carriers of that inextinguishable light. Let our covenant with him be a covenant with the Imam of our age, his descendant, Imam al-Hujjah, Imam Mahdi. May our souls be his ransom, and may you hasten his return. O God, make us worthy of his return. Purify our intentions, strengthen our resolve, and make us among those who pave the way for his blessed return, living as beacons of justice in a world drowning in tyranny. And in this moment, O Lord, our hearts turn to the most oppressed on your earth. We turn to Gaza and to all of Palestine, where a genocide unfolds before the eyes of the world, even though we are told talk of ceasefires. O God, O the just, O the avenger, be with your people in Gaza. Shield them from the bombs and schemes of the most deranged of your creation. Grant patience to the mothers who pull their martyred children from the rubble, and grant victory to the hands of the resistance who fight in your name. We bear witness before you, O Lord, to the grotesque hypocrisy of our age. We see the collective West and the Arab and Muslim vassals who possess the power to end this slaughter, yet they do nothing. They sit, they talk, they hold meetings, they cry crocodiles for the cameras, but then in the dark, they continue to send weapons and support to the child killers. O God, we declare our complete disassociation, our tabarra, from these silent collaborators and their arrogant masters. We are at peace only with those who are at peace with Ahlul Bayt, and we are at war with any who enable the murder of the innocent. Grant victory to the true inheritors of the Imam's legacy, those who wage the jihad of the word and the sword in defense of the downtrodden. O Lord, seal our lives with the happiness of knowing and serving you, and make our deaths the death of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, so that we may be raised under the banner in the blessed government of your final proof. Amen, O Lord, sustainer of the universes. Amen, O most merciful of the merciful. Wa akhiru da'wani an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.